Okay, now we're actually going to take a look at what it costs to use electricity. So obviously, we have to pay to use electricity in our homes. Your parents will be paying a hydro bill every month, whether that's part of their rent, if they're renting an apartment or a house, or whether they own a house or a condo or something. We'll always have to pay for electricity. So any electricity you use, we have to pay for. If your parents have ever told you to turn off the lights because it's wasting money, well, we're going to figure out how much that actually costs. So the cost of power. In order to sell electrical power, we must have a way of calculating how much electricity is being used and how much it costs. We do it by charging by the price per unit of energy or power. So we get our power from Manitoba Hydro. That's our provider for electricity in this province. And because most of our electricity is made through hydroelectric dams up north in northern Manitoba, we've created these dams, we've flooded out lots of land, but the water flows through the dam, creates electricity by turning a turbine, which turns a generator. And that electricity gets sent to the south in southern Manitoba, where most of the people are, and we get charged for whatever we use. But you only get charged for what you use. So if you use less, you don't have to pay as much. If you use more energy efficient appliances, you don't pay as much. So the cost of power, they have to know how much power you've used. So they measure this in something called kilowatts. And now, because 1 watt, like if you turn on a light bulb and it's using 100 watts every second, that's a lot of watts all the time, right? So if we want to talk about how much power you've used over a course of a month, well, it's not going to be just watts. We want a bigger unit. So instead of measuring in watts, we measure in thousands of watts or kilowatts, just like measuring meters versus kilometers. So we measured in thousands of watts. 1 kilowatt is just 1,000 watts. If you know your watts, we just divide them by 1,000 to get kilowatts. So let's say you used 10,000 watts. Well, divide that by 1,000, and that would be 10 kilowatts. Oops, kilowatts. Just like 10,000 meters is 10 kilometers. This word kilo literally means 1,000 watts, thousands of watts. So if I say 1 kilowatt, I'm literally saying 1,000 watts. All right, so we must know how much power we've used, and then they also over a amount of time. So they're actually measuring kilowatt hours, kilowatts times hours. And the meter on your house actually does this measuring for you. We actually don't have to do anything with that. Somebody every other month, probably, somebody from Manitoba Hydro will come and read your meter. Out in the country where I live, we have to read our own meter every month and send that reading in because they don't send people out to the middle of nowhere, I guess. That's what the meter looks like on the side of your house. And we will calculate the amount of kilowatt hours using that equation. So if we take kilowatts times time, that gives us our kilowatt hours. But again, the meter already does that. They just take a reading on those dials on the meter, and we call it in, or Hydro will call it in. So to calculate cost, we use that. We use this formula. So we take the kilowatts, the hours, and the price, and we multiply them. So power times time times price. This is the main formula that we're using, this one. Power times time times price. In Manitoba, we have some of the cheapest power in North America, and this is because we have so much to sell. So Manitoba Hydro will sell us what we need first at a cheaper price, and then they send anything that we don't use, they send off to the states, like North Dakota, Minnesota, to Ontario, other provinces or states that need more electricity, that don't make as much as we do, and use more than we do. And we charge them a little bit more so that Manitobans get a better price for their electricity. So we actually have some of the cheapest hydro rates or electricity rates in all of Canada. Now, we call ours hydro because most of ours is made from a hydroelectric, but if you go to other places like in Florida or in California, they just call it the electric bill. They don't say the hydro bill like we do because their electricity is made in a different way. This is what a typical hydro bill would look like. Now, this will be my bill from December for 1 month. I think this was December 2 years ago, but still, it's about the same still. 1 month during December costed, or this was actually, I think, during the month of November, cost me $301.17. And why so much? Well, because we were going into wintertime, so my furnace is running, my lights are on more often, and that's how much it costs every month. Now in the summertime, my bill would typically be only about $80 to $100, and that's because the lights aren't on all the time, the furnace isn't running, and I'm only using a little. I don't use the air conditioner too often, but when I do that, it increases the price a little bit, but not as much as the furnace. My furnace is electric. Most furnaces in the city are probably natural gas, but still, in the wintertime, you use more electricity because it's darker and it's colder. So every month we get this hydro bill, or I actually send my reading out. So every month, before it was that, when I read it, it was that, and then I send that number in, and that tells me how many kilowatt hours I've used. So it's 3,140 kilowatt hours that I used that month, and then here is the price. It's almost 9 cents per kilowatt hour. So every kilowatt hour you use costs 9 cents. Roughly, it's just under 9 cents. And then there's some tax and things on it. Now you can see my electricity usage. This is a map from my hydro bill, and it shows in I. And warmer up and days get longer, my electricity usage, and then back up towards October, November, and then we would get higher in December. So your electricity usage does this all year, or like all the time, up and down. More in the less in the summer, more in the winter. And they actually are pretty good to show me like how we compared to the previous years. So you can see in December, this year and the last year were about the same, but this year and last year for January last January I used more, and it's probably because maybe it was a colder winter or colder month that year. But this February, mine is higher than the previous February, and vice versa. So it depends on the temperature outside, that kind of thing. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to learn how much it costs to run individual appliances. And you're going to say, well, how does your bill get so high? And you'll see what I mean in a second. So if we're going to leave a 100-watt light bulb on for 2 hours. So let's see, say you left your bedroom light on, you left it on for 2 hours. Let's see how much this is going to cost. Now we're going to assume electricity costs us 9 cents per kilowatt hour. 9 cents in dollars looks like this. So cost, actually let's write down what we have. So cost is what we're looking for. Power, we know, is 100 watts. And time is 2 hours. Now we're going to use time in hours because we're not going to measure how much it costs per second. We're going to talk about per hour. And then the price is $0.09. So cost equals power times time times price. So cost equals 100 watts. Ooh, but we forgot. We have to change the 100 watts to kilowatts. So we're going to fix that. 100 watts divided by 1,000 is 0.1 kilowatts. So 0.1 kilowatts time was 2 hours, and price was $0.09. So when we multiply that out, 0.1 times 2 times 0.09 gives me $0.018. What does that mean? Well, this is $1, this is tens of cents, this is ones of cents. So this is 1.8 cents. So if you leave a light on in your house for 2 hours, that only costs just under 2 cents. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot. So why are we so worried? Well, you see what my bill looks like, because it's not just one light on in your house. You have a refrigerator running, you have heaters running, you have televisions and PlayStations and computers that are all using electricity in the background all the time, all year round, day in and night too, all through the night. So all of that adds up. Yeah, 2 hours of one light bulb doesn't seem like a lot, but it does add up fast, and you can get up into the $300, $400, $500 range for a hydro bill if you're not careful. So that is why your parents will say, hey, you need to turn these things off. So let's look at what it costs to watch a TV for 4 hours a day for a month. So Let's say our TV is on for 4 hours a day for a month. Let's say our month is 30 days. So how much does it cost? So first things first, let's write power is 200 watts. Time, they give us 4 hours a day times 30 days. So 4 times 30 would be 120 hours. You can see how quickly that adds up. Dollars. So cost equals power times time times price. So cost equals 200, oh, but I did it again. We forgot to change to kilowatts. So divide by 1,000 and find kilowatts, 0.2 kilowatts. So power will be 0.2 kilowatts. Time was 120 hours, and price is $0.09. So my cost for running that television is 0.2 times 120 times 0.09. And it's $2.16 to run that television. Now again, that's not a very powerful TV. This is probably just a little one, but at the end of the day, it's a couple bucks for a month. But again, think about all of the other things that you run in your house. And especially things like a clothes dryer or a stove or a refrigerator, they all use much, much, much more electricity. So the last question here says we use an appliance that draws 6 amps over 110 volt system for 10 hours a day in February. How much does it cost? So what we can do with this question, let's list out all the things we're given and then we'll try to figure this out. So we got 6 amps, so that's current. Volts they gave us is 110. They gave me time, 10 hours a day in February. February is 28 days. So 10 hours times 28 days is 280 hours. And then they're asking for cost. And we know the price is 9 cents. And that's all we have. So we want to find cost. So I'm going to write the cost formula. Power times time times price. Okay, well, we don't know cost. We don't know power, but we do know time is 280 hours. And we do know the price is $0.09. But we don't have power. We need to know power in order to solve for cost. So we do have another formula for P. We have P equals E over T. We also have P equals I over V. And I do have I and V, so I can solve this out. 6 amps, 110 volts. So power equals 6 divided by 110. Or sorry, P, not I over V. That's the wrong equation. I was thinking E over T. Did that wrong. P equals I times V. So P equals I times V. So P, I was wondering because that seemed like a very low power. 6 amps times 110 volts. So this should be 660 watts. Now remember, we want our watts in kilowatts. So we divide by 1,000. So 0.66 kilowatts. 0.66 kilowatts. So now we multiply those out. 0.66 times 280 times 0.09. And it costs $16.632. So $16.63 to run that appliance. And you can see how quickly things add up. So we're talking about all of the electricity you use for all of the things that use electricity in your home all month long.